Hi, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to our library online series. I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. My name is Angela, and I would like to welcome you all to a special online author event with freelance writer and young adult author Kay Kerr, who joins us today to discuss her book, Please Don't Hug Me. Welcome, Kay, and thank you for dialing in to chat with us today. So,
Thank you so much for having me.
for those who haven't read Please Don't Hug Me, which we do have here, can you briefly describe what the book is all about? So, your best 2-minute elevator pitch.
Yeah, I don't know if I've gotten any better at this since I started doing them, but it's a young adult own voices story about an autistic girl called Erin, and she's in the last couple of months of high school, and I guess she's struggling with all of the change that comes with that, with exams and with preparing to finish school and schoolies. So she's trying to help herself manage by writing letters to her brother Rudy, who has been away for a year.
So, what inspired you to write this story?
I think at the time when I started it, I was a journalist. So I was looking for a creative outlet. All my writing was very, journalistic. So very dry and very real based. And I wanted to have a little bit more of a play around with creative writing. And I was very drawn to that time at the end of high school. I read a lot of YA and I love that coming of age or, trying to figure out who you are or what you want to be, that kind of time period. So yeah, I was really drawn to the end of high school because so much is crammed into the last couple of months and it's such a flurry of change. And yeah, I wanted to explore that a little bit more on the page.
I think it's a time that's very relatable to everyone as well. So many people have gone through the stresses of that time too.
Yeah, and I think we see a lot of American sort of prom and that sort of thing. And I wanted to write a really Australian sort of example of that with formal and schoolies as opposed to spring break.
Yeah, definitely, because I don't think people in Australia really know what that's about, but they can connect with this. So at your bio at the start of the book mentions that you received your own autism spectrum diagnosis while writing the first draft. So how much did your diagnosis impact the edits moving forward and your writing process?
Yeah, so I think that's really what I wrote the book about before I realized that that's what I was doing, because I wanted to explore why I guess I was finding things difficult, or I did find things difficult that other people seem to find easy, or those social misunderstandings, and especially all the stress that came around with the change at the end of high school. So once I got that diagnosis and realized that about myself, I realized that's what was going on with Erin on the page as well. So I went back, and a lot of it was there. I just didn't have the language around explaining it. So she was socially anxious and she was awkward and she was trying to figure out, why she was so sensitive to so many sensory things. So really it was just going back and putting in, language around meltdowns or shutdowns or processing those kinds of things. And from there, that's when I really kind of felt like the story got legs and sort of started to form the shape that it ended up at the published book.
So with your first draft then, was Erin not on the spectrum? It only that changed with the character after you received your own
Yeah,
diagnosis?
yeah. So, I mean, if I would read back the first draft now, I would be able to, I feel like she would read to me as very autistic, but it wasn't named on the page until I learned that about myself. And then, put that down for Erin as well.
So even though you said she is autistic, as someone who's not on the spectrum, I still found Erin so relatable in so many ways. So her anxieties about how others perceive her, the way she thinks about herself versus then how she acts, and just the general concerns and worries around the end of year 12 and being a teenager. Was this purposeful in the way that you wrote the story?
I think pretty different to that. I think I was writing her thinking she was this really unrelatable character or really unlikable character. And I like to read stories where you've got imperfect characters, making mistakes and trying to figure out how to be better. But I definitely thought that she was going to be someone that people might read and kind of go, oh, that's a bit strange, or that's not nice, or, you know, those kinds of things. And it's only through editing it and publishing it that so many people have said to me, autistic or not autistic people have said how much they've related to her. And that's been, I think, being undiagnosed autistic for me, I felt so much of the things that I was going through was my fault, or I was not being very good at those things. So the process of publishing the story and having so many people relate to it has been really positive and really healing.
That's fantastic. I think it's a lot of the things that go unsaid, and it's not until someone's brave enough to put paper to pen or say them out loud that others then go, me too, and open up about their own experiences then that way. So,
Yeah, I think when I first wrote it, I felt so personal, even though the things that happened to her in the book don't happen to me. Just all the feelings felt really personal. So I think in order to sort of trick myself into being free enough to write it, I was just like, I'll never show it to anyone. I'll never try and get it published. I just need to write it. So that's how it, got down.
in saying that, was it a cathartic experience for you?
Yeah, the path to publication is a long process. I started writing the book in 2014. So it's given me a lot of, and I had to rewrite it and rewrite it because really it was my first attempt at writing a novel. So things like pacing and the story, you know, getting the plot right, came definitely in the later drafts. So by the time I got to the point where it was being published, I am so much more comfortable in my own diagnosis and my own self, and you know how much it can be of benefit to other young autistic people to have this story out there. But that was definitely a journey from 2014 to now.
We had an author, Holden Shepherd, earlier in the year, and he, YA author as well, and he was saying that he thought that it was going to be a lot of younger people coming up to him, but in fact, that it was a lot of older people coming up to him and saying that I finally feel seen. Have you had a similar sort of experience?
Yeah, Holden's book is so special. And I think, I went to a launch of his in Brisbane, and there were a mix of ages in the audience there, which was cool. For me, I've had, both. I've had lots of autistic people that are in high school emailing me, sometimes even emailing me when they're in class going, this is what's happening, I'm reading your book. But definitely lots of older people as well. And I think sometimes people might not get an autism diagnosis until their child gets an autism diagnosis, and they start to learn a little bit more about it and either seek out their own diagnosis, or maybe just understand at a self-diagnosis level that they are possibly autistic. So I think, that idea of being represented on the page or feeling seen is really important. It's important to me when I read, other female autistic characters. There's two books that Queens of Geek by Jen Wild, and Peter Lyer's Rating Normal by Anna Waitley, and both of those have young Australian autistic girls in them. And when I read those, it's a really emotional experience to see yourself reflected back.
So, back to the book, the use of letters I found was an interesting choice. And I also found it a little heartbreaking at times because it's a one-way communication. Why did you choose to make it that way and only from Erin's perspective?
I think because I started writing it out as diary entries initially, but I soon realized that she needed to feel connected to the person that she was writing to. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any sort of reason for her to be as open, or to try and explain herself in such a thorough way. So I never considered having it as a dual perspective story at all. But I think the letters for me was, Erin really wants to be understood. She really wants to be understood by the people that love her and people that she loves. So in the moment, because of all the sensory and social stuff that she's processing, she has a really hard time saying what she means, or even knowing what she means, or what she feels. So it's when she goes away and has time to think about that she's able to sort of figure out what she wants to say. So that's how the letters came in. I think it's the truest reflection of Erin, where she's at and her feelings, when she has time to process it all.
In your acknowledgements, you reference your sensitivity readers. Are you able to speak a little bit more to this?
Yeah, so one of the characters, somebody that Erin meets at her new job, is Aggie, and she's a young Quandamooka woman. She is a singer, and she also works with Erin. So for that character, I hired two First Nations readers who are also in the writing scene as well, just to read over that character and to give me some feedback as to whether it was hitting the right marks in terms of authenticity, and some, changes or tweaks I could make to make sure that that was reading as authentically as possible, which I think is something that lots of authors do these days. And I think it's it's not like a safe, it's not like there's a tick of approval and now there's nothing wrong with it, but it's just an extra step to make sure that your characters are representing, marginalized identities, whether it's, sexuality or gender or disability, or race, in a way that's going to be seen authentically.
So what do you hope your readers take away from the book? We've touched on this a little bit, but in terms of, do you think it differs depending on the individual reader's experience with the spectrum? Is there different takeaways you want them to have?
Yeah, I think I started really internally with the writing. It was about, what I wanted to process. And then once that was on the page, it became about what I wanted other young autistic people, particularly young autistic girls, to feel. And that was to feel seen and to feel represented, and to feel less alone, I guess. And then the more that the book's been out there and the more feedback I've been hearing, it's become about, helping other people with autistic people in their lives understand them a little bit more, or empathize with the things that they struggle with a little bit more. And then from there, it's a book for everybody, I think, because it's, things like finishing school and trying to figure out what you want to do with your life, and trying to navigate friendships and new relationships and that kind of thing is quite universal as well.
You talked about how long it took to get the book published. Is there any advice that you give to those working on their first major piece of writing or looking to get their own works published?
So I would say it's really probably boring advice, but to just get the words on the page for the first draft, and you can think about making beautiful sentences and that kind of thing down the track when you're editing, but just getting the words down while the story's in your head is a really good start. And then also connecting with writers' centres. We've got Queensland Writers' Centre up here that does a really good job hosting events and workshops and that kind of thing. So that helps, I guess, with getting your foot in the door with the writing community, because I think everywhere around Australia has, these hubs of writers, and everybody really wants to support everybody else. So the sooner you can put your foot in the door there, whether it's online or whether it's in person, I think is really important.
Is there a passage or letter that you have ready that you would like to read to us today?
Yeah, so I just chose one of Erin's shorter letters, because she does have a tendency to ramble, but this is a letter from about a third of the way through. So, dear Rudy, sometimes I don't think about you at all. Like, if you were to look inside my head on a certain day, you'd think I was the eldest of 2 children, going about my business, caring for and thinking of only Ollie and myself. I don't say that to hurt you. I suppose I'm just trying to paint a proper picture of how things are. Okay, maybe somewhere deep down I want to hurt you a little. That wouldn't be wrong. Did I tell you Oliver wants to get a dog? He's really obsessed with it. He wants a little brown sausage dog and he wants to call it Rudy. I think that's cute, but also kind of weird. The name part, that is. I think the sausage dog part is only cute. Sometimes he talks about Rudy and we all think he's talking about you, but he's actually talking about what he wants to do with his dog when he gets it, like this morning. He piped up over his bowl of Weet-Bix. Rudy loves dressing up like Batman and Robin with me. Mum looked surprised. I think he caught her off guard. She said, yes, baby, he loves you so much. Then Oliver said something about needing to cut a hole in the costume for his tail, and Mum looked confused. I reminded her of the sausage dog thing and she looked relieved. A hole for his tail, of course, she said. Mum said she doesn't want the commitment of a dog, as if she isn't already tied to this life in this house, 3 children, a husband and a mortgage. I think it would be nice to have a little animal here, and maybe I wouldn't move out if we had a dog. I'd have to help look after it and take it for walks with Oliver because he's too little to do it on his own. Mum is probably a bit nervous ever since we had that cat Daisy before Oliver was born. She was a pretty cat, but remember how she always seemed to want to escape, like she was angry to be living with us. I don't blame her, I guess. We were pretty intense when we dress her up in doll's clothes and make her put on shows. Then when she got hit by that car, I got so obsessed with dying and death. I remember playing funerals with my dolls and telling old people they were going to die soon. I told Mum's Aunt Marilyn she was going to die right before she did, remember? Maybe you don't. Mum was really close with Marilyn, and I felt like Mum thought I'd killed her, even though that's ridiculous because a 6-year-old can't cause lung cancer. But there was a bad feeling there, and I can still feel it if I think back hard enough, like my words had big consequences. Maybe we shouldn't get a dog, or maybe I'll get a cat when I move out and do it right this time.
What was it that made you choose that one to read today?
I think a lot of what's going on with Erin is inside her head, and so I thought that was a good section that captured, her family life and how she processes things, things from the past that she remembered so vividly. In telling Rudy about that.
So what's next for you? Is there any other books on the cards? Anything else coming up?
Yeah, so I signed recently with Text Again for a second young adult novel that'll come out next year. And it's exploring dating and being on the autism spectrum with a character that's new to the dating world and trying to, I guess, figure that out. So it's been a lot of fun to write. I wrote it, I started when there were the bushfires and wrote, through that and into coronavirus. So it's been like a little joyful escape from everything that's been going on.
Well, Kay, thank you so much for joining us today. And I also want to thank our viewers, those who are watching this online. I hope that you've enjoyed today's talk. If you'd love to view other events we've hosted online, simply sign up to our programs and events at your library group via Central Coast Council's Facebook page. Or to see what other live events we have coming up, make sure you sign up to our e-news at centralcoast.nsw.gov.au/libraries. Enjoy your day, and we hope to see you again soon. And once again, thank you, Kay.
Thank you so much.